Today's guest, Doug Anton. Thank you for being on the show today.
Pleasure.
So I like to, just have a brief introduction and have you do it if you don't mind, because I feel like you will do your own introduction slightly better and only do you justice. Just for the people that aren't familiar with you, will you please give us just a small background on yourself and then after eventually how you know this guy over here?
Sure. Well, my name is Doug Anton. I'm an attorney, licensed to practice in state and federal courts throughout the country. I represent, my practice is a general practice, but I mostly do criminal defense and entertainment law, which sometimes the two cross over. My entertainers have some criminal matters, and sometimes the criminal defense clients are involved in the entertainment business or become investors in the entertainment business or have excellent stories of their own intellectual properties that we seek to move through the fields of entertainment. Been a practicing attorney for 25 years in good standing with all the states that I practice in. I also own a company called Conception Sports and Entertainment Management, where we handle the careers of athletes as well as entertainers. I'm a licensed NBA player agent, and I do work as an attorney for NFL players and pretty much every sports teams out there. I do work for players, either legal or agent work for players, including boxing and most recently MMA. In fact, one of my clients, Buddy McGirt, and John, you know Buddy. Buddy McGirt is been hired and is now training Deontay Wilder for the next fight. So that's a huge bump to Buddy, and he's doing fantastic. So that's a great thing for us there. But he's out in LA or Vegas or LA training him now. So we're looking forward to that. But my practice is a general one. For some unknown reason, as John will attest, I don't sleep. So I'm available 24 hours to all my clients whenever they need me. Most recently, the case that has kept me up is representing R. Kelly in his New York criminal matters in federal court in the Eastern District of New York and in state court in Chicago. He also has federal charges in Illinois, which I am not representing him on. I'm not licensed in Illinois, although I am for the state court matter on a special license when I was brought in for that. So my office is in North Jersey, Hackensack, New Jersey, and I live in North Jersey as well. That's about it.
Now, I have so many questions for you personally. I guess the first one obviously is how did you how did you and John kind of get in touch, and then what's your process like when you determine who you're going to bring on as a client or not, and then I guess maybe if you're allowed to, just kind of the relationship you've developed with John over the years and what it's like being his his attorney.
First, I got to find out, John, did you fire me today?
No, you're still good.
Yeah, John fires me regularly when we have arguments about stuff. John, let no one ever think that John doesn't make his own decisions and is completely in charge of his life and his career. So I think it was about 2011. Either it was through Kim or somebody else.
Yeah, it was from Kim from the Housewives.
Yeah, Kim and our judge friend was involved in having us meet. And John came out of prison at that time, and I was turned on to him by Kim D from the New Jersey Housewives in the sense of not here's this guy who served time, not this, but here's a guy with exceedingly interesting intellectual property, which is his life and his involvement as a right hand, if you will, of John Gotti Jr., and of the things that he did along those lines in that life. So any intellectual property like that, I take an interest in. I wasn't representing Sammy at the time. That came a little after. But I had represented other people in organized crime and just criminals or alleged criminals indeed. And I took an interest in John to meet with him for the intellectual property. But then when I got to know John, I would dare say that we become good friends over a period of these last 8 or 9 years, to the point like brothers, where we argue, we scream, we yell. I haven't put a hit yet out John, but
and I didn't try to kill him yet. I threatened him a couple of times. I haven't tried.
So John's always been there for me when I've needed him, and I hope I've always been there for him. We've worked on several intellectual properties together. We've worked on a lot of film, the stuff that he's filmed. And I make sure his contracts are in order before he shows up on set somewhere. and make sure that nobody is going to treat him wrong, because the repercussions they will feel from hurting John has nothing to do with John, where it used to maybe. Now it has to do with me. I will make sure that he's well protected. John will just turn it over to me, and I will always do things in the legal way. I've been criticized for it. I've been told that I'm representing bad people and this and that. Well, criminal defense attorneys always get told we're representing bad people because those are the ones accused. But if you look at my record of acquittal, turns out that juries 90% of the time say that my clients were indeed not guilty. So that's actually a pretty good thing that I happen to be representing not guilty people. But so the process that John and I have, in the beginning, it was, John referring interested people in John and his story to me, saying, Doug, I got this interest, I got this and that. And then me trying to negotiate deals with him, and mostly weeding out who was just excited to talk to John and who was actually a legitimate player who could do something with his intellectual property, his story. And then it turned into just me getting phone calls from John when he started putting out segments of his intellectual property. We filmed that thing for, who was Beth with? Beth was with the History Channel?
History Channel.
We filmed that thing with Beth, and that got out there, and that was great. We filmed that thing for Netflix. Either it's been on or it's coming on soon, I think, the Netflix thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that people have flown in from all over the world to do filming for John here. And John's flown to several places to do filming and to give lectures. And that's another aspect of what John does. I'm not much involved with it because it doesn't generate income. Not that I'm only involved in the things that generate income, but there's nothing for me to do when John books his own speaking and lectures for helping youth steer away from the life that was stolen from him, from those aspects of that. And there's nobody better than to discuss the pitfalls of being a drug addict than a drug addict. There's nobody better than the pitfalls of a life spent in crime and with the mafia than a guy who has left that life and now wants to teach about it. Mm-hmm. You have to have the experience in order to teach appropriately. And I have gone, like when we go to the PAL stuff here in town, or we go, and I have gone, Philly, when we went to that thing with George, I have gone to some of them. The audience is captivated because they have the real deal sitting in front of them. And they know that it's not just someone who talks about, like they see lawyers who can't do law teach, and so on. So, and real lawyers go to, well, in John's world, he has been there. So when he talks about it, it's not like, well, you'll hear in the industry that, mafia guys do this and that. John speaks from what he was involved in. And that sets a roadmap for kids to be like, yeah, those 10 things that led you in that direction, I'm on number 4. I better stop, or else this is foreseeable what's going to take place. So our life now is about talking about my dad before he passed away, John's family and their health, when we're going to get together and smoke some cigars down at the beach, and what new intellectual property inquiries we have received for him. And then he gives me updates, sometimes emotional updates, with respect to some of the people he has reached and touched, and the kids that he has set their lives. And sometimes he reads me letters from parents that, oh my God, whoever thought that the saving grace for my child would come from this type of person who was there. And it's a tribute. I'm not saying that John hasn't done bad things in his past, but if we I'm not a greatly religious person, but I have read the Bible. If we go by the Bible, what John's doing is something that the religions would approve of. You have to repent and then make amends for what you're doing. And I think that's where we're at now. And that it generates income for John so that he can do good with that. I know John's against saying what charities and stuff he gives to, but I'm involved in those things as well. And he's made a great turnaround, and I think that it's starting to show, and people want to hear what he has to say because he delivers a message properly, intelligently, and with the background that makes you understand it's for real.
Now, I have a quick question for you. When you're, you're dealing with some of the most high-profile individuals in the world, really. How do you personally vet who you're going to bring on? And are there any moral qualms about, some people that come to you and for sure they're guilty of what they've done. Some people are controversial, whatnot. How do you kind of respond to that criticism and go through your own kind of, the psyche of picking who you want to defend and be associated with, really?
Well, I say this: I don't judge anyone. My job as a criminal defense attorney is not ever to put my arm around somebody and say, hey, this dude's a good guy, you should find him not guilty. In fact, that's called vouching for a client. We're not even permitted to do that as lawyers. I never vouch for a client in court. Like I said, I'm friends with John now. I vouch for him as a decent human being and I don't know him when he was doing things that were not decent. So I could just say that I know the man, I like the man, I trust the man. As far as other clients go, I've always said this, and it's gotten me some criticism for it, but I don't care what you're alleged to have done. I don't know that you did it. And even if you tell me you did it, the law is set up for ways we handle that. It's not my job to prove a client innocent. It's my job to make sure the government proves them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That's all it is. It's giving the jury everything they need to know to make a proper decision. If I do that and the client is found guilty, I don't have any problem with it because a jury will have made that decision. Luckily, in my practice thus far, I haven't had very many instances where somebody has been found guilty. That's not to say I'm Superman and I win every case. It's that the ones where the client says, yes, that is me on video, I did do that, but the guy attacked me first and I stabbed him back. You plea out those cases to something reasonable and you try to make deals with them so that the system moves smoothly and the person's life isn't destroyed by a trial that would put him in jail for 25 years. Instead, he does 5 years and saves everybody grief and money. So as far as clients go, I say this regularly, I've taken some hit. I don't care who you are. I would have represented Saddam Hussein. In fact, I tried to get on that defense. Saddam Hussein, Hitler, the devil, I don't care. It doesn't mean I'm a bad guy and I want them to get free. It means that when I take a case on like that, if you have a guy like me or like Steve Greenberg, who's also in charge of the R. Kelly case out of Chicago and has been R. Kelly's attorney for years. You have Tom Farinella or Mike Leonard. But these guys, they take on clients to help them. And we can't judge the client or else nobody defense attorney would ever take on a client. So I don't judge anyone. I would represent anyone and do my job to make sure they get a fair shake. If at the end, and the system should want this, and it does want this, if in the end the client is found guilty, well, then you know that if a guy like myself was fighting hard for the client and he was found guilty, then you really can know he's guilty. Because I've given it everything I can to make sure that the system worked its way through and all the evidence was looked at properly. And I'm not alone. There's thousands and thousands of amazing attorneys out there who fight crazy hard for their clients, public defenders being one of the top people on the list of doing that. So I don't care what someone's accused of. I will always defend them. Now, the next question is, how do I pick? It's just about a matter of time. It's a matter of how much time I can dedicate to that client. I get a lot of celebrity clients contacting me to represent them in various things. I just can't do it all. And my clients, once they hire me, they don't want any of the attorneys or anybody working for me to be their main person. We have them do the work. We have some excellent people here, but they want me on it 24 hours a day. And it's not that easy to do. And as I get older, as you can tell from some of the gray here, I got to have somewhat of a life,
Now, I also have a quick question. Because you obviously represent John. You also mentioned another big mafia name is Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Yes.
What has it been like working? I mean, I know you work with a variety of athletes and criminal, whatever it may be, but specifically John and also Sammy. Will you talk about those experiences and how those two have been maybe different from a legal standpoint, and how you've talked about your personal relationship with John, but maybe if that's also developed with Sammy and how that's different or similar, if you're allowed to go into some of that.
Sure, I'll touch upon it. Well, John I already went into already, and John and I are considerably closer than Sammy and I are. So I think it was Karen Gravano, Sammy's daughter, had some issues, and John turned me on to talking to Karen, and then Karen gave me a call with regard to some issues. Grand Theft Auto had stolen her name and likeness, was the position she had taken with Tom Farinella, an excellent attorney who I work with the R. Kelly case. I brought him on for that. So he was working with her on that, and he was also assisting Sammy on his motion to be released early from jail on a drug crime in Arizona in the early 2000s. So I came on with that, and I went and met Sammy several times and worked on that matter with him. And we had Sammy, and then Sammy got released as a result of his sentence and the work we did. So I met Sammy maybe 10 or so times at the federal facility. And even though he's out, I'm not going to say where it was because I don't know if that's appropriate, but I met him there, and we went over his case. He's an interesting gentleman in that he's intense. He's funny, he's likable, but he's an intense gentleman. And he's intense because of who he is. He's intense with everything he does. He understands everything. A very highly intelligent person, very loving family person. And we had some really good conversations. But Sammy, when you have a conversation with Sammy the Bull Gravano, he is an intense human being. And that comes across in literally everything he does. I happen to be skilled in establishing there's a Son of Sam law that says anything somebody does can be, if a person has been convicted of a crime, they can't make money off that crime. And each law has their own applicable Son of Sam parameters, and it was changed from its original thing. The Supreme Court changed it because of freedom of expression. But there are ways, I don't want to say around it, but there are ways to make sure victims' crime compensation boards get their money that they're entitled to, but that also the person with the intellectual property doesn't have a blanket theft from him of what his life has consisted of, and that's a constitutionally protected thing under the First Amendment. For example, if John were to say, hey, let me tell you a story about how I went in there and got this guy, Vinny Boombats, and stabbed him in the throat and so on and so forth. That, I'm sorry to just totally generic there. That would be something that would be compensable by he'd have to pay the income from that to the Victims' Crime Compensation Board. If John were to write a cookbook about his life and tell anecdotic stories, just because John's making money off of his fame or his notoriety does not mean any of that needs to go to victims' crime compensation. So when you have an interview, for example, somebody interviews John, that is not John telling his story for profit. That is him giving an interview, and in news interviews they don't pay. So which is what took place with the Gotti's Rules book. That was an interview by renowned author George Anastasia. And John's recent books, Darkest Hour and the trilogy, are more about his life in general, only pointing to some degree at some of the things he's done. And we break those down like a musicologist would do. We do it like a literologist would do. It's sort of a term I made up to break down what percentages might be applied. But Sammy's an intense guy. That's not to say John's not intense, but having known John and hung out with him more. If Sammy was local, I'd be hanging out with Sammy, smoking cigars as well. But he's in Arizona, and I don't get to see him that often.
How about Doug, your newest client,
yes,
sitting to the right of me, Gene Borrello?
Yes. Yeah. Gene has got an amazing story. The government will read this story. I mean, a lot of our purchasers will be government officials who will be like, how did it all go down? It's giving an inside window on a lot of the things that have gone down. So it'll be great because with Gene's story and with John's, you have the lecture capability because it's more than just this happened story. It makes people inquire further into what were you going through when that happened? Or when you heard that happen, how did you feel? And what? So their stories are interactive stories that lead to further discussion and I learned this from John, and education. And with education comes people's ability to evolve, understand, and then really get past what has taken place. I have been stunned to learn that some of John's recent and last 5-year friends have been relatives of people he has not been very nice with, and dare I say, have committed crimes against. And they want to know from John, what was it my dad doing, or what was he involved in? You right, John? I mean, you can, the names if you want.
I mean, a lot of people and that's why, obviously Gene came on board to help me and continue the same thing to the younger generation of kids, to talk about staying away from crime and what it is and why we got into it and how do we influence them to get away from it. So that's a big part of what we're doing and what Gene's doing now with me. Talking to whether individuals one-on-one or in groups or in big, high schools like I did at Newark High School with this 400 or 500 kids inside the auditorium.